What's up, world? This is America. We are bringing you our social segment this week. My name is Hobson McCain.
My name is Mark Ray Redmond.
And today it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to be talking about the importance of the Supreme Court and the importance of a potential Supreme Court nomination given that Justice Anthony Kennedy just resigned. So, as I'm sure you guys know, the United States government works on a system of checks and balances. Congress checks the executive branch. Congress is a legislative branch. They check the president and the White House, which is the executive branch. And White House can check Congress with vetoes, and there's a whole bunch of back and forth. And the Supreme Court can check Congress, and Congress can check. It goes back and forth so that nobody has too much power and nobody has total control. Now, with this specific Supreme Court nomination, it's a very, very big deal in terms of for the next 2 years and for the next 40 to 50 years of
however long the man's in office.
Yeah, because Supreme Court nominations, unlike the Senate, which is two-year terms, and unlike the House, which is 6-year terms, the Supreme Court, they're nominated, and once they are accepted and put into office, it's not put into office, is it?
I mean, it's an office, I guess.
But once Supreme Court nominations are...
You hold the office for a justice, I guess.
True. Okay. So, hold the office. So, yeah, once they are... verified, voted on, and confirmed by the Senate. Yes, they're appointed by the president appoints a nominee. Then the Senate votes on said nominee. They need to get a majority in the Senate, 51 votes. There's 100 congressmen in the Senate, so they need to get 51 votes in order to be confirmed as a U.S. Supreme Court justice. And like we were trying to get to, Supreme Court justices are appointed for life or until resignation, like Anthony Kennedy just resigned. So for obvious reasons, this can have, implications for the next generation. Somebody who's born today might be having to deal with the next Supreme Court nominee until he's 45, 50 years old.
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly. Now, Donald Trump just nominated Brett Kavanaugh to be the next Supreme Court justice. As you guys know, or you might not know, but right now the Supreme Court is split 4-4. There's 9 Supreme Court justices. Anthony Kennedy, who was a Supreme Court justice, was seen as, in many ways, a swing vote in the Supreme Court. So when he was appointed by a Republican, George Bush, and no, he was not appointed by George Bush. Cut that, leaks. He was appointed by a Republican, Ronald Reagan. But he has actively supported abortion rights. He's supported gay rights. He was the swing vote that said that gay marriage would be legal in all 50 United States, or in all 50 states across the country. So he was a very progressive conservative, as conservatives come. Now, Brett Kavanaugh is a staunch conservative. Like, he is not a... Kavanaugh. Yeah. So Brett Kavanaugh is he's a staunch conservative. He supports. He has actively attempted to deny people the right to abortion. He's very vocal about his support of the Second Amendment and people's rights to bear any kind of arm that they want to bear, whether it be automatic rifles, military-grade weapons, silencers, extended clips, anything that they want to get. He's in support of it, excluding like tanks and jets and all, out of this world stuff. But so having him in the Supreme Court will solidify the Republicans' hold on that branch of government for the foreseeable future.
That means they have hold over everywhere, though, as of right now, correct? The House, the Senate, the presidency, and the Supreme. If this goes their way.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting to, is that, you know, the Republicans obviously have a hold on Congress right now. They have a majority in Congress, both the House and the Senate. They have the presidency, and they are looking to potentially, you know, have the judicial branch as well, the Supreme Court. So it's interesting, the timing of Anthony Kennedy's resignation, for one main reason, that the election is coming in November. Usually Supreme Court justices will, you know, hold off for a few months until the midterm election if they're going to resign. Now, what that does is it gives Congress the chance to flip if it was going to flip. So if the American voters come out and there's a blue wave, like many people are predicting that there's going to be, and Democrats regain control of the House or the Senate, particularly the Senate, then they could in turn deny the president's nominee and not confirm him for the office of Supreme Court Justice. Now, when they did it, now that Anthony Kennedy has resigned beforehand, before the November election, the Republicans already have the Senate, the Republicans already have the presidency. So he pretty much has ensured that for the foreseeable future, the Republicans will have the Supreme Court as well. Now, that's, for Democrats, that's a little bit scary, a little bit frightening. You know, not like life-threatening per se, but you know, it's foreseeing an uphill battle for them.
Uphill battle is an understatement. Bro.
Yeah, it really is.
Presidency, the House, Congress, and they have the Supreme Court if this goes their way. That gets rid of the entire idea of checks and balances. Who's going to check who? If everybody wants the same thing. Everybody that's in office right now is underneath Donald Trump's umbrella. That's the way that the government is becoming. If you don't agree with Donald Trump, you don't get put into office. It's kind of ironic that this... How do you say his name again? I read it differently.
Brett Kavanaugh? Brett Kavanaugh?
Brett Kavanaugh? Yeah. It's kind of ironic that Brett Kavanaugh is getting put into office now, like you said, right before the elections, to where they could have been Democrats in office to kind of nullify this type of, I don't want to call it treachery, but he's trying to finesse and put it to where he can't get in any trouble. Because Brett Kavanaugh, he's a guy that does not agree with the Mueller investigation at all. And that in itself is what I believe is the biggest reason that he's appointed him to the Supreme Court. Because all comes down to the Supreme Court when it comes down to appeals and all that. They're the highest court in the land, so if they have the majority there, nobody can overrule them.
And it's important to recognize that it's not just that he doesn't agree with the Mueller investigation, because obviously, you know, if you're a supporter of Trump, which you know, a lot of the country is, you know, even his approval ratings, let's say at the lowest, were like 31%, 32%. That means 32% of the country, of our 350 million people, so that's what, 110 million people think that Donald Trump's doing a great job. So that's still a significant portion of the American population is in support of Trump. So they would not be in support of the Mueller investigation if it threatens Trump's presidency, right? Brett Kavanaugh has written that a president should not be investigated at all while he's in office. They said any criminal investigation should be deferred until after the presidency, because it could jeopardize the functionality of the federal government, removing the head.
That makes absolutely no sense to give the president a green light to do whatever he wants to while he's in office. He doesn't need that. That's the entire purpose of checks and balances.
And
What he just said goes against the entire principle that are one of the founding principles that our government was based on, and that's checks and balances. If you are telling the president he can do whatever he wants to, he's going to do whatever he wants to, especially if he can sign executive orders and appoint people to offices like Supreme Court justice.
and our government was designed. There are policies in place in case the president were to get assassinated, like John F. Kennedy, or impeached, or removed from office. There are policies and systems that will take place to ensure that there's a line of succession, right? So if Donald Trump is removed from office because of a criminal investigation, for example, the collusion with Russia, if Donald Trump is, and this is all hypothetical at this point because nothing has been proven. So we're not concluding that Donald Trump is in league with the Russians, but just for the sake of argument, let's say he is, and he's impeached and he's removed from office, as he should be, because he should not be in league with a foreign power.
Exactly.
So if he was, and if he is, and this Mueller investigation leads to him being removed from office, our government is not going to freak out, die, and the world's going to go into chaos because the United States doesn't have a president anymore. Mike Pence will become president. And things, there'll probably be a slight little rough transition period where people are, you're trying to get into the swing of things, getting used to it. You don't know how the Mike Pence presidency is going to differ from the Donald Trump presidency, but he's the vice president, so he knows all the policies, all the executive orders that Donald Trump has signed. He knows his policies. He supports his policies. Supposedly that's why he ran with the man. So there wouldn't be this drastic, collapse of the federal government like Kavanaugh is insinuating when he makes those remarks. So why else would you say that a president should not be criminally investigated? And why do you think Donald Trump appointed someone who doesn't support presidents being criminally investigated?
It's very suspicious, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's you can't put somebody in jail over consequential evidence or coincidental evidence. But this is, like you said, it's very suspicious, and we've done probably 2 or 3 episodes on the Russian investigation, so we don't want to get into that too much.
But once again, there are indictments. Everybody that's a part of that investigation on Donald Trump's side is, I'm not going to say they're in hot water, but they know somebody that did something wrong because there's too many of them that have been indicted for nobody to know what's going on.
Yeah, and there have been multiple times where Trump and his administration have said things alluding to the fact that, it might not have been Russia or it might not have been Russia. They were given information from multiple intelligence agencies like 3 weeks after they were in office, showing them that Russia did meddle in the election. So everything after like a month that they were in office, and they said that they didn't know if Russia or it could be somebody else. All of that was just deference and manipulation. So, again, we can't. Yeah, we can't say that means that there is collusion. We could just say that it's suspicious. It's weird. Like,
it's weird. I something being weird is something that you don't understand. To me, in my opinion, like, weird is something that is kind of out there. You can't really wrap your mind around why it happened. I understand full and well why he put this man in the office, or why he's trying to get him put in the office. Because if he's on the Supreme Court, they'll have the numbers on the Supreme Court, and if it all comes down to it, he actually does start getting investigated, and everybody starts getting in trouble. And let's say that he does something like he pardoned somebody that he shouldn't have pardoned, and somebody tries to say it's unconstitutional. When it comes down to it, the Supreme Court is going to make a decision as to whether his decision and his actions were unconstitutional or not. So this is a big move that he's trying to make, especially, like you said, before these elections, to where the Democrats could tell him, no, you're not going to just put someone in office that's going to let you off the hook. It's not fair. It's I don't want to call it smart either, because it's very obvious what's going on, in my opinion. But there's not too many people that can stop it at this point. So
Yeah, and that's the thing. There have been multiple reports that Donald Trump and his administration went to Anthony Kennedy and prodded him to resign when he did.
And it make
And that makes sense. That's a strategic move. As a president, you don't want to be under investigation. But again, if there was nothing to hide, or if you were not like, if there was no collusion with Russia, then why would you not, first of all, testify and go into an interview with Robert Mueller and clear the air? Why would you need to put in a Supreme Court justice that doesn't believe presidents should be criminally investigated until they are out of office? Why would you repeatedly, despite information your intelligence community has given you, deny the fact that there was interference in the first place, or even allude to the fact that it could have been somebody else when there is concrete evidence that it was Russia? All of these things, that it's like, I don't know, if your kid spills something in the room and you go up to him and say, "Did you spill this?" and he starts looking around like, well, I yeah. Well, then that's like, symbols or
there's nobody here.
yeah,
It's just you.
it's just like these are signals that there is something going on.
And it really is a limited amount of people that it could have been. Like the suspects, like to me, the list of suspects for meddling in our election has to be pretty small, especially considering that one side was against the other. Like you have a pretty small pool of people to look from, and like we keep saying, people have been indicted. Javi, what is the number? Like, do you know how many people total have been indicted?
Yes, there are. I'm not going to say for a fact, but I know that for a fact it's 4 or 5 that have been indicted, and 12 are being investigated. And I think it just got increased to 13 this weekend, or this past weekend, the weekend of the 21st, 22nd.
And 5, so that's 18 people that are being...
No. The five was included. The 5 was included. So 12, 13 total. Yeah.
13 people, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Not 18. 13 people. 13 people close to Donald Trump and his campaign are in trouble for colluding with Russia. I don't think that is a question as to whether or not his campaign and his team colluded with Russia. The question is whether Donald Trump colluded with Russia. That's what we're trying to figure out. And it seems to me, like we said, it's very suspicious that he's trying to kind of cherry pick the government and set it up to where he can't lose. That's not how the government works. And there has to be some way to check this. I guess there is. With the elections coming up, even if he does pad the Supreme Court, I don't know how that would work. Like you said, once he's in office.
Even if he does put, if Brett Kavanaugh does get approved and he does take his office as Supreme Court Justice, that's still a 5-4 majority. Technically, Anthony Kennedy was also a Republican, and so there was still a 5-4 majority in the Supreme Court. So,
but the swing vote's no longer swing vote.
Yeah, the swing. Yeah, there wouldn't be a swing vote, so it's pretty much any policy that or any issue that got brought in front of the Supreme Court, if it was a partisan issue, would go the Republicans' way. That's just the facts of the matter. Now, the November elections, this doesn't diminish the importance of the November elections. The November elections for Democrats are drastically important because if Republicans hold Congress, President, and the Supreme Court, like Mark said, and assuming that they're all in consensus about what they want to do and the policies that they want to enact going forward, then there would be nothing that anybody could do to stop it. So they could, if they want to remove Social Security altogether, they could.
They have the numbers everywhere.
Yeah, and even if a federal judge in Hawaii or New York or one of the more liberal, or California, one of the more liberal-leaning states, if they challenged it and said bring it towards the Supreme Court, that would essentially just be them delaying the inevitable because the Supreme Court is with the Republicans.
We would have a Republican Supreme Court. if everything goes Donald Trump's way. That's just the facts of it. There's no other way to look at it. Kennedy was a swing vote, and I think that people need to understand what the swing vote is. The swing vote is the vote that determines whether or not something is passed, or I'm trying to think of the right way to word it, but the swing vote determines whether or not the Supreme Court is for or against something. And if you take that away, then in essence, you're removing the balance from our government. And we need that in order for the government to run like it's supposed to and run effectively. It turns into a monarchy.
Oligarchy. Yeah, oligarchy. Yeah. But, just like you said, it's hard to say, what exactly will happen in the next 2 years if Republicans maintain hold of Congress, gain a firmer hold on the Supreme Court, and they will have the presidency for the next 2 years. So it's hard to say what exactly will happen. There's going to be an election in 2020, obviously, but the Supreme Court, like we said in the beginning of the episode, those nominations and those appointments are for life. So the next election, we're not going to vote for a new set of Supreme Court justices. It's going to be the same set of Supreme Court justices. And of the 4 Democratic or liberal-leaning Supreme Court justices, I think one of them's 92, 2 of them are like 89 or 88, and the other one's like 84. So, they're getting close to their retirement time. So, assuming, let's say another one resigns next year, then there could be a 6-3 majority in the Supreme Court. So indefinitely until one of them resigns or one of them dies, and so that that's a scary proposition, especially when you think about all the monumental decisions that have come through the Supreme Court. Brown versus Board of Education, Roe versus Wade. These are decisions that literally shaped the past 40 years of our country. And a Supreme Court justice hasn't been impeached since 1805. So it's kind of, I guess we could say, we can impeach one if we need to. That hasn't happened in 200 years. So,
I wonder what we have to do to get impeached.
Yeah, and we see a lot of wild things that Donald Trump does and says, and there hasn't been any call for impeachment there. But anyway, we're not supposed to be talking about Donald Trump, so we're not going to get into that. But Brett Kavanaugh, his appointment isn't life-changingly drastic. It could be for women's rights, and that's a huge issue for the Roe versus Wade and the rights for women to choose what is done with their bodies, whether they have to carry a child to term, whether they have to, have it, if they're raped and get impregnated, whether they have to carry that child for the rest of their life. These are things that could be changed because of Brett Kavanaugh, because he's not that swing vote, because we know which way he's going to vote, but he is that securing vote for the Republican Party. And Republicans run on the they call it pro-life to, make it sound appealing, like if you're against it, you're evil. But
you're anti if you're not pro-life.
Yeah, nobody's anti-life, and they don't pass any legislation for foster kids and kids who are of, lower economic status and stuff like that, where when a lot of these single moms and stuff like that, teenage moms, are going to end up, there's not much legislation passed for them, but it's pro-life. So regardless,
it's circumstantial. It's all about. We had an episode a week ago about the kids at the border. Their lives don't seem important to the Republicans, but that's another story. Go check that episode.
we try not to get
partisan,
too
choosing
partisan,
sides.
but you know, I mean, in this case,
Facts.
this is what is going on. You know, Republicans are pro-life. They do not think abortions should be a thing. Liberals think that women should be able to choose. If the Supreme Court is staunchly 5-4, leaning to the Republican side, and that case is brought to the Supreme Court, Roe versus Wade could very well be reversed.
And they wouldn't
In
think
my
anything
opinion,
of it.
yeah,
There wasn't anything that anybody could do. I mean, like, the Democrats in office obviously would be vocal and against it, but they wouldn't have the numbers. And without the numbers in a democracy, you can't do anything.
so
That's
you know,
true.
we're gonna have an episode later this week about the importance of voting in local and state elections. Make sure you tune in for that, because this election in November, whether you're Republican or Democrat, is drastically important, and you need to go out and vote. So, with that, we're gonna cut it short. You know, we obviously got a little bit heated, or whatever you want to call it. But
Speak the truth.
yeah, these are
The facts.
yeah, these are the facts. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Please give us some suggestions. Give us some topics you think we should talk about. You know, we don't have a limitation on topics. We choose topics, and we choose them out of the topics that people present to us. And if you guys think that there's something that we would address in a way that other news shows don't address it, or you just want to see us address something, let us know, and we will put it on the show.